I would either make this a darker comedy where she over poisons him and then she has to do Weekend at Bernie's, but with him. But
when she finishes dressed as him.
And then there's a version where this becomes a horror movie at the end, and like she's chasing around Reynolds and he becomes the final girl, except he actually dies at the end of the movie and then she takes over the business. But
damn.
Okay, I'm thinking too much.
This is a lot. We've really gone off the train.
Alrighty, guys, welcome back to Cinema Pursuit. This week we have another great episode. I'm here with my old so-and-so, Zach. Say what's up.
What's up?
And I'm here with my old so-and-so's, I guess, his
So-and-so?
woodcock.
Oh, no.
What's up, Kat?
Wait, I'm not toxic like that, man. What the shit? Hi, guys. I'm here again.
I simply don't have time for confrontation.
It's not breakfast, though.
It reminded me of a Hopper from Stranger Things, and the man's just like, mornings are for contemplation and coffee. I was like, this is same vibe.
Yeah, same energy, honestly.
Yeah, the movie we're talking about this week, if you can't already tell, is Phantom Thread, a movie that's near and dear to, I hope, all PTA fans, Paul Thomas Anderson fans, and more to Zach and Kat here. Zach, why this movie today?
There's a lot of reasons. First, I want to talk about is when Kat and I saw this in the theater. It was just me and her, and it was really like a midday movie. Might have been like a Saturday or something. And we went in there, and it was mostly empty except for some elderly couples. This was really a movie that I'm not sure what the marketing was for, but you could tell it was not a movie that appealed to the youth unless you were already a PTA fan. So when we were in there, it was all elderly except for me and Kat. And we sit down, we start watching, and just dead silence from everybody the whole time we're watching. And I can't just help but just start cracking up during like very early in the movie. It's when he's at the breakfast scene and he's with his, I guess it was his girlfriend at that time. And he's just annoyed by the confrontation, what I just quoted. Breakfast is not a time for confrontation. I just simply don't have time for confrontation. And I just start cracking up. And I'm like, is this supposed to be a comedy? Did I miss something here? Is this a funny movie? And then the movie opened up to me like very early on, and it felt like every few minutes there was just something that had me almost belly laughing in the theater. I'm sure the older people in the theater were not very happy with me. None of them were laughing, but this movie is a true comedy, and it's one of my favorites. Me and Kat revisit it every year for New Year's. Like, we consider it a New Year's movie. And every year, the week between Christmas and New Year's, we always revisit it. But there's also one other thing we used it for, too. Kat, I'm going to let you take the floor for that.
So we love this movie so much that we actually pulled a quote from it to use as a reading in our wedding. And we recreated some of the photos we see taken in the movie.
Toxic.
So So we will post these on the socials, but I'll read the quote later. It's just such a great movie, and the fact that we watch it every year shows how much we love it, because I don't think there's been a year we haven't watched it since it was released.
There's been a lot of movies that Kat and I have both liked, and this is, she has her favorites and I have my favorites, but as a team, this is like our favorite movie as like a team.
Yeah.
That in a weird way, this is like the movie we connect the most on and we love with the same capacity to love something.
Yeah, this movie, I didn't realize it was a comedy or had some sort of comedic vibe until that dinner scene where Reynolds is throwing a fit. So I'm hearing Zach beside me laughing. I'm like 19, almost 20 watching this movie, completely confused why this man's laughing at this drama. And then I see Reynolds start throwing a fit. I'm like, oh, this is supposed to be funny. And that was kind of a new thing to me, which I've said before, like...
Are you a spy? Where's your gun?
Show me your gun.
Are you here to kill me?
Is there a gun?
Are you here to kill me?
These movies that we've talked about recently, I saw between the ages of like 18 to 20. And in that age range is where I started to learn that film can be played very straight while having some really strong comedic vibes. And I think this movie just is top tier with that for me. Perfect delivery. Love this movie. Like I said, we used it in our wedding. Like, this is our favorite movie as a couple for sure.
Not to make this pod all about us, but so Vikash, what are your memories of seeing this movie?
Yeah, please talk.
What's funny is this movie, I mean, y'all saw it. I don't know what was wrong with y'all's theater. I mean, I only had the same thing. I had two older women that sat about 2 rows down from me. I saw it at the old AMC on Stevenson. It's the, you know, the one that another AMC they yet again shut down in our whatever city. But literally no one was there. It was just me and them. And I was laughing the whole movie too. It was hilarious. And the women were laughing with me. So I don't know who had a stick up there behind, but I mean, the movie's hilarious. And I wouldn't say it's like the funniest movie of all time or anything, but like it hits a peak of humor where it's like almost the sardonic, dry humor that I really love. It is that, and it hits it every chance it gets, whether it's, you know, putting the butter on the bread too loud and like they crank up the sound design on it. It's like everything's perfect. And I think this movie, just for like a little bit of background, it came off the desire of trying to make a gothic romance movie. Listen to this, Kat. He wanted to make a Christmas horror movie with Daniel Day-Lewis.
Bullshit.
And the script wasn't there. No, dead serious. Literally, I was listening to him talk with, I think his name's Alan Parker, a director in the UK, like back in 2017. And he's like, yeah, we were trying to make this Christmas horror movie and it just didn't work out. The script wasn't there.
Yeah.
And that kind of brought this idea. And we'll talk about, for him, it was, Maya Rudolph, you know, Paul Thomas Anderson's much more famous, much more hilarious half.
I totally didn't realize they were married till yesterday.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, I've known forever. I mean, awesome power couple. But Paul Thomas Anderson, he got sick. And then she was like tending to him and all that. And he was like, oh, I haven't seen this look on her face in a long time. Like, oh, like this endearing love. And what he took that as a base for was like, oh, I can have this be something where I have a man who doesn't really have a lot of emotions or he's always busy. And then when he's all sick and stuff and his wife has to tend to him, then he's more tender. So that's where this movie came from, besides the whole Balenciaga thing we'll talk about.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give some credit to Maya Rudolph in this, actually. Like, imagine their fights. The fights in this movie have to be informed from his real experience, where you have two people who have a really good sense of humor, who, when they're maybe not like, you know, furious at each other, but they're, you know, pissed off with each other, right?
Bickering.
Bickering. It's got to be funny. And when Reynolds bickers with anybody in this movie, it is hilarious. And it's never mean. I mean, it can be mean. He can be trying to be mean, but it never comes off as like intense. It's like, oh, it's really funny how they're bickering, and Vicky can get on his level. Vicky Krieps, who plays Alma, she's able to match him pound for pound of how this bickering. And it's so funny and has to be informed by their relationship, and it works great.
Yeah, Paul said, literally just listen to it. Paul was talking about how that scene with the asparagus and the butter that we were just quoting, that scene is like, oh no, mother and like mom and dad are fighting. And he's like, it reminds him of his childhood. That's what it does for Paul Thomas.
I admire the gallantry that it will eat this the way that you prepared it.
You know, while he's being so passive aggressive in those scenes, can I just say, aside from that whole bit, so fucking relatable when it comes to like the level of bickering with your partner, long-term partner too, which they're not long-term partners, but they have that chemistry. It is so on the nose. Like, you're gonna get annoyed at each other, and then the one little thing, bam, you're gonna go at it. And I don't care. I'll admit it. My husband and I bicker sometimes. It's part of a healthy relationship. And, you know, it's just really nice to see it transcribed to film in a funny and relatable light. And I definitely see the mom and dad bickering at the dinner table here.
And the thing is that you bring up DDL, Daniel Day-Lewis. We're going to be calling him DDL just for short. We've been calling him DDL for 10 years. But Daniel Day-Lewis, the reason why you mentioned that Vicky Krieps, Alma, she stays pound for pound with him is that a couple weeks like before they shot the movie, when they were trying to find the woman that would be the main character of this movie, I think it is her more than DDL, more than Wood Reynolds, is that she, after a couple weeks, Daniel was like, he was telling PT, he was like, yeah, like, I'm nervous. And it's like every movie that DDL is in, the man is pound for pound taking the screen from anybody else, and he is the dude. He is the person you're looking at in the entire room that's doing the best acting, right? But then Vicky comes in, real life and on film, where it's like, she's pound for pound. punching with DDL, and the dynamic is one that's almost nervous. It's almost very close. It doesn't feel like he's above her in any way. Like she's coming in and grasping and taking the power that she demands as a character and as an actress. I think it's awesome.
It's great. I see it.
Yeah, I think that for this movie to work, you can't only have DDL giving a good performance, is that you need that counterpart, that person who can go blow for blow with them. And there's a very limited number of actors who can do that. And to find Vicky Krieps out of nowhere and have her come in and just be able to just pound for pound stay with him the whole movie is incredible. And Paul Thomas Anderson is fortunate he was able to find the right person, because this movie would probably not be one of our favorites if the actress would not be able to keep up with him. And she not only does that, but she goes past him in some scenes too. Like it's incredible performance, and that's why the movie works.
That's the thing, is like another guy of like Daniel's stature would probably be like, I'm not gonna let this woman like updo me or anything like that. The most juice for the most part that Daniel gets is pretty much in the beginning. Like, you know, pretty much from the jump, like, okay, this man is really just, you know, a mama's boy who has a lot of issues, and anytime he doesn't get his way, he's gonna throw a fit, and his mommy has to come and deal with him, and it just happens to be his new partner. So I mean, it's just something else. And the thing is that these movies, it's supposed to be a gothic romance that this comes from. I know y'all haven't seen it, but Hitchcock's Rebecca, he made a couple of them, Rebecca and Suspicion. Mm-hmm. Gothic romances come from books like, or let's see, there's some movies that they have made from them. Edgar Allan Poe, some Bronte sisters stuff, Bram Stoker, Ray Lewis Stevenson, a lot of like almost supernatural things at times. There's Jane Eyre, if you've seen that, cat. But these movies, they usually have more of a quote-unquote feminine appeal. So there's a lot more shown of the feminine side, whether that's anger, range of like, you know, range of emotions, distrust of like, you know, patriarchy stuff. But that sort of story, they've tried making it quite a few times recently. They made literally a bar-for-bar remake of Rebecca, and it ain't this. This is so good. Like, Phantom Thread is just on a different level. And, I mean, Zach has his thoughts on Crimson Peak. We're not going to get into it.
You read my mind.
I know. And it's like, I have all the love for Guillermo del Toro, but this movie is a better picture.
All I can say about Crimson Peak is that it's a beautiful movie. It's a beautiful looking movie. That's my take on Crimson Peak.
Dan Lostenson, amazing DP. He shot the crap out of that movie. That's what he just said. Okay.
Also, fun fact, that ski resort was totally in House of Gucci for their honeymoon.
Oh, the one that they shoot at? Yeah.
I saw it, and I was like, holy shit, that's the House of Gucci ski resort.
Oh, gosh. Imagine if Lady Gaga was playing Vicky Krieps.
Lady Gaga could do it, but I wouldn't have her do
It'd be
it
totally
because
different.
She doesn't have the same vibe.
No,
it would be totally
the problem
different.
is that I think Lady Gaga is almost like she's more theatrical with her performance. I wouldn't say. I think that Krieps is almost subdued in some ways, and then she pulls out her knife and stabs you real quick. And then she's like, hi, what's up, guys? That's the beauty of her performance, right?
Yeah.
So it's like she's almost unassuming, but then I wouldn't say she's a villain or she's like the devil or something, but she doing it right. This is a good for her movie. I'll tell you that.
She's able to restrain herself really well when she needs to, and then when she doesn't need to, she can let it loose. She does a great
I support
job.
women's rights and especially women's wrongs, so...
Women's wrongs.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, isn't this kind of Gone Girl? I was like, this makes sense to me here. I like this.
There's a version of the story that turns into Gone Girl, I'm sure. There has to be a draft somewhere that he wrote where she accidentally overpoisons him, and then he just threw it away immediately. I was like, nah, that's not good.
I would either make this a darker comedy where she overpoisons him, and then she has to do Weekend at Bernie's, but with him. But
when she finishes dressed as him.
And then there's a version where this becomes a horror movie at the end, and like she's chasing around Reynolds, and he becomes the final girl, except he actually dies at the end of the movie, and then she takes over the business. But
damn.
Okay, I'm thinking too much.
This is a lot. We've really gone off the train.
So the story of Balenciaga, which I'm sure everybody knows his brand now. He was a courtier or like a couture. He was one of these guys who was making these clothes at the level that Woodcock is in this movie in real life. And it was practically from the womb that he became someone who was making clothes. He was in that world because of his mother. And he was that good and that great at his job. And that's what PTA and DDL kind of took his inspiration, besides Maya Rudolph trying to, nurse him back together, is that on the fashion side, they went to the 50s. This movie's set in like 1954,
It's in the
1955.
50s, yeah.
Or it's 55 definitely, because the menu, I paused it. You can see on the menu, it says 1955 on there, like Christmas or New Year's 1955.
There you go.
The whole inspiration is just something else. I think it's something where I see it in a lot of like Indian movies where they'll take a piece from here, they'll take a piece from here, and then put it together. And then you'll have something like this, or you'll have something like Oblivion, where it kind of just feels like a rehash. And this doesn't feel like a rehash. It feels like they really found something new.
Let me try to land the plane on this. So the whole Balenciaga thing just made me have a thought. The way that Daniel Day-Lewis portrayed this character, he really had to toe a line here of still being masculine, but still being able to be a dressmaker. And let me land the plane on this. I know this is risky territory. What I'm trying to say is a lot of actors would have came into this and say, let me play this in a very feminine way, and then it would have been a joke, or they would have been seen as weak. And he's able to just toe the line of doing something that, historically people would have seen as a feminine thing to do, make dresses, but he's able to do it in a way that's masculine and lets him still seem like the patriarch of the house. And I think that's really hard to do.
It's super classy the way that he does it.
So Alan Parker, the conversation that PTA has with Alan Parker asks the first question. He's like, why'd you make this story in this setting? And like, essentially, he's like, why is it not like a homosexual man that is in this role? Because in the 50s, it was very hard to not, like, the entire industry of like, the London couture was ran by gay men. And PTA and DDL, while they were kind of writing this, or PTA was writing and then DDL came in for notes essentially all the time, was that like, if we can find 2 instances of it, we can put it into the real script. So they had the romance part already there, but they had to set it somewhere. So they set it within this territory, but then they're like, okay, can we do this story this way? And they found at least 2 heterosexual coutiers that were there, so they did it. You're exactly right. Like there's a very interesting, what if someone else had made this movie, especially a woman would have written this movie, where it might have been a better movie.
Zachary,
You can
fight
take
this
that back.
man. And I'm all for women.
But a better movie, meaning like a different movie, a movie in this setting that's not necessarily about their relationship. Whatever. More different, compelling, different nature.
No. I think you made a good point. You said when he wrote the movie, at first he wrote the love story and then he found the setting, right? So his focus was always going to be on the love story. The setting is just, the stage for his play. But, the story, he wanted to tell this love story first and foremost. If someone else did this, maybe they would want to focus more on the aspects of the industry and what people faced and all that. But PTA was not interested in that. He was more interested in telling this love story.
Do you think this is Paul Thomas Anderson's happiest movie?
I know you said this quite a bit, and I've been pondering on it. I got a list of his movies right here. Let me look.
Starting with Heart 8, Magnolia, There Will Be Blood, Punch Drunk Love, Boogie Nights.
So it's not Boogie
The
Nights.
Master, Inherent Vice.
It's not Boogie Nights.
It ain't Dirk Diggler.
I mean, there's even though Punch Drunk Love has a lot of rage in it, there's an argument that could be somewhat in there. You could also make an argument for Licorice Pizza is a pretty happy-go-lucky movie.
Licorice Pizza.
For me, this one makes me the most happiest, and I feel like this has the least lows. I feel like there's even more lows in Licorice Pizza than there is in Phantom Thread. So I think you're right. I think this is probably his happiest movie.
Okay, so let's get to it. Categories. Action is the juice. This movie, yet again, another one. Juice on juice on juice. Cat, action is the juice. What is your juice scene of this movie?
So for me, I really think the action is found towards the end of the movie. When Elma is cooking the poisonous mushrooms for Reynolds right in his fucking face.
Kat, I love you so much.
I know. I knew we would overlap a lot for this movie.
I'm about to vomit because that's the scene I had too.
Okay, then we can just go straight into it.
Did we all pick the same
Yes.
scene? Did we all pick the same scene?
Because it has the juice. I guess I'll kick it off then. So, first off, she's cooking his poison mushroom omelet right in his face, and he knows it. They're making eye contact the whole time. She's passive-aggressively adding a ton of butter, which at the beginning or towards the beginning of the movie, he detests. So, She's being passive aggressive, adding a ton of butter. She's cooking it in plain sight. He's been kind of an asshole lately, and she's thinking he needs to go down a peg. So with calmness, he eats his omelet, and before he chews and swallows, she gives him a silent plea in her eyes, and then she tells him, you want me to read the quote?
Yeah.
Okay. So while they're doing all this passive aggressiveness, Reynolds goes to the table, and he begins to eat his omelet very slowly and calmly. And Alma gives this silent plea in her eye very patiently, but you can see there's some pleading in there. And as he's about to eat it, she shares her intent. I want you flat on your back, helpless, tender, open, with only me to help. And then I want you strong again. You're not going to die. You might wish you were going to die, but you're not going to. You need to settle down a little. And then he swallows, and then they start kissing. He says, kiss me, my girl, before I'm sick. And in the script, it says, they kiss and smile at each other. Reynolds couldn't be more excited at the sight of her.
Damn, that line
What
always
a
gets
beautiful
me.
scene.
I don't see it as you say she's playing with him. I feel like at that moment, by the end of the film, she's not playing. It's a demand. It's a contract within into their relationship now that if you don't do this, I ain't sticking around. And she sees it as being like, I've got to pull this love out of like this man that I've been, I'm giving myself to, and he's got to be there on the same page that
No, agreed.
you're gonna have to do this. And the way that DDL holds up the fork before he eats it, and the way that he's looking at it, and the light above them is perfect. Perfect scene.
I wouldn't disagree with you at all with that. But if you look at her eyes, right before she speaks and shares the quote that I read, there's a softening in her eyes that occurs. I watched this clip 5 times, okay? I was making sure I got the quote correct because it does deviate from the script a tad. So I needed to make sure I got it right. But I saw this softening in her eyes as they're staring each other down. This is only the second time she's poisoned him that we know of. So the first time wasn't known or consented to, but this time clearly it is known. It is not vocally communicated, but it is communicated on that wavelength that a relationship has. And he calmly accepts that this is what is needed, and she patiently waits for it to occur.
Yeah, I had a few scenes down, and that was one of them that I wrote, and was the one I thought of at like today. I was like, wow, actually, this has the most juice. It was not what I expected, but that really is the key moment of the movie. Is she's over there and she's not even hiding that she's poisoning him. She's even putting too much butter on it like he hates. And this is the moment where he has to make the decision, am I going to allow this to happen? And is this what I want for my relationship? Because they both know this is the only way the relationship works. And the way that he just kind of looks at her, you can tell immediately he's already made his decision, but he plays with her a bit. He kind of looks, smells the food, puts it in his mouth, doesn't chew it for a minute, then chews it for a long time, waits as long as he can to swallow it, and then, making eye contact the whole time, and then decides to swallow it. And all that is what we've seen from the whole movie, his like playful kind of antagonizing of her, and sometimes being antagonized by her. And it's just wonderful. And until he finally swallows it, you really don't know what's going to happen.
And the thing is that they go on from this scene to like cut together a few things where you see like, the carriage with the stroller and stuff like that. They had in the deleted scenes, you'll see that they actually they shot it where he's playing with, like, they have their kid, their toddler, and he's with the kids, and it's almost too happy, their ending that they show. So they cut it back a little bit as to what we see after
Make it
that
more
scene.
subtle.
Yeah, I think this movie I think it's almost an antithesis to what Magnolia is for PTA, where this movie has a little bit of, intercutting to like, the narration itself, but I think it comes back in a interesting way. We'll talk about it. Zach, did you have any other scenes that you wanted to talk about? Because actually,
You should go, because I have two.
I'll
Yeah.
go with mine. Mine's at the top of the movie, so it's better to just do mine
Ooh.
first.
Yeah, go for
Okay.
it.
So my action of the juice scene, which, I did have the omelet one written down, the mushroom omelet. Even Nolan was talking about how in his house, if they make anything with mushrooms, that his kids are like, oh no, here we go. Mom's pissed. So mine is the opening scene of this movie where they're opening up shop, essentially. We see Reynolds getting ready. He's, washing his face. He's putting on his socks. The way that this man puts on his socks might be one of the best things I've seen in my life. I was like, why am I so fascinated with the way that he's putting on his socks? I don't know what it was. It just affects you. And then the score that's playing, it's piano, but it feels like they're playing a harp. And, they're setting up shop. You get to see all these beautiful details that's like, oh, Reynolds knows everybody's name. This is the place that they work, and they give such a grand opening to where they are and what they do that you have nothing but respect and almost a romance to the place, to the setting itself. And I think most directors can't get that done, and the juice within that is there for me.
I wholeheartedly agree.
It's a great setup scene. You have all the people coming into the house that work on the dresses. They do a really good job of giving you the layout of the house, the majesty of it. The score is sweeping behind it with this very, string-heavy music that is just very elegant. And it really sets the stage for where most of this movie takes place, which is in the house. This movie doesn't leave the house very often. It really doesn't. So it really needs to do a good job of establishing the main setting, and it's wonderfully shot.
And it's like as soon as you have everybody come in, the first person, Lesley Manville's character, Cyril Woodcock's sister, she comes to the door and she preps herself. She's like, okay, now we have a client. And then we see the whole process with the client. That actress is actually in The Bodyguard, great actress. Then we get the scene. I think my favorite part is the end of that whole montage is, the shot's a little lower and we see Reynolds and her sitting on a bench. Is like, I think this is going to give me confidence, right? And then you see like, oh, all this like hectic nonsense that is happening, this creativity that's happening is meant for this emotion that like, yeah, this woman is going to get this empowerment from this. And then you see the meaning of, okay, this is what this man does, who these people are, and why this matters. And it doesn't necessarily need to be there, but the reasons for it being there outweigh it. I don't know. If you read the script is 83 pages and the movie is like 130 minutes.
2 hours
and usually it's a minute a
12
page.
minutes, I believe.
Yeah. And that's why, like, I don't know. They added so much love into this movie that it just comes off on screen, and that's that scene for me.
That's a really good choice. It's not one I wrote down, and I didn't really think of it in the way that you described it, but it really is the perfect opening for what this movie needs.
So when I was watching the movie, as people probably have guessed at this point, I take notes while I'm watching. I take several pages of notes. So with the Reynolds montage, that's what I called it in my notes, I wrote, this movie is one of the most best shot films at that just one bit. Just because it's just, you get the setting, you get the vibe, and you get that emotion from what they're working on. And that alone, you could just do a short story and call it a day. Tie it up with a bow, 5 minutes, call it, you're good. You would have had me.
And that's the problem, right? That I think that PTA shows an insane amount of restraint and push within this movie, where he does things that are a bit different. He does his own thing, which we all love and respect him for. And it comes out as something that should be something that people are like, oh yeah, I love this movie. This inspired me. And I would love to hear that from people more than, I don't think people talk about this movie enough.
Absolutely.
Zach, what is your action is the juice scene, man?
Sure. So I'm going to give you two because I was surprised that one of you didn't pick one of these. So I want to make sure we cover both. So I'll give you my second choice first, which is about midway through the movie when they're getting the dress back from Barbara, played by Harriet Sansom Harris. Very good character actor who shows up in a lot of things.
Also, another note within Balenciaga's story that there was a rich, affluent, American heiress that would come and get dresses made by Balenciaga. So built from that base, and then it's like, he runs it within his narrative.
Yep. And if we're talking action, this is the most clearly just action scene in the movie. If you think the score is really ratcheted off to be more fast paced and more, deep notes and to just really get your blood pumping, and the whole thing, decision. It's really when Woodcock and Alma work together the most because, she's like, you can't let him wear that dress. Like, she's really ride or die in that moment.
Alma is 100% a ride or die girl. And you see it here. She gets that righteous fury. And I stand alongside her. I love it. She's just like, no, you cannot put up with this. I don't care. You need to get that dress back. And she just gives him the go.
And anytime you have an action scene, it's either going to crank up the music or it's going to crank it all the way down.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah,
keep going.
So he infuses a lot of humor into it. You're at the some sadness too. You're at the wedding. She's getting drunk. She clearly doesn't want to be there. She's clearly very self-conscious of her body. But at the end of the day, that dress represents Woodcock's work. It represents his business, represents his livelihood, and she's making a mess of it in public. And so they go to get it back. Clearly, Woodcock can't go take it off her. That would be improper. So Vicky, the boss babe here, gets to go in and take it off her as she's protesting and, very drunk in bed. And then the key to the scene, though, is that they're walking back and then they stop and he turns around and he kisses her. And not only does he kiss her, he leans into her heavily. They start at the center of the frame and then they lean backwards some because he's, that much in love with her at that moment and so proud of her and happy to be with her. And it really ties together it's the payoff. It wasn't the dress it was the payoff for the action. It was the kiss at the end. And it was, the score ratchets up to a 10. It's just perfect. It's a perfect frame.
Yeah, I love that scene. And not just the kiss. Right before that, Alma turns around and she says, I don't care what she does. Barbara can do whatever the fuck she wants. But she cannot continue to behave this way and be dressed by the House of Woodcock. And she walks on out. And that's what gets her that kiss. That beautifully shot kiss. Are you kidding me? That's like poster kiss. Yeah. Perfect.
But I think that's the most romantic moment of the entire movie, in my opinion, at least.
One of the.
Just say it. Just say it. Because classic romance wise, think about it. Like, you want that big kiss. And when is that? It comes at the end with the omelet, but I feel like swooning with the score and everything else, this is the juicier one.
Yeah.
In terms of classic juice, not emotionally, I guess. Put it that way.
Let me give you the other scene too. So my actual first choice, the one that I thought of first, I wrote down before we even got to the scene because I knew this is what I was going to do. It's when Alma leaves Woodcock to go to the New Year's party and Woodcock follows later on behind to go find her, and it's chaos. You see all these people dressed in funny ways. There's balloons everywhere. The lighting's a mess. You can see people getting, visibly drunk and running around on the floor. And he's frantically trying to find her. The score is going loud. The lighting is really intense and dark. And he's just trying to find his love. And you can see the desperation of Woodcock to just find Alma. All he wants to do is find Alma and apologize. He just wants to apologize to her that he did not consider her wants and needs in this situation. And the countdown's happening in the background, so it ratchets up the action of just, it's like 10, 9, 8, 7. He's looking around trying to find her, and when he finally finds her, he gives her a look and she gives her a look, and it's just like, wow, that is just fantastic filmmaking.
I also had this written down. I actually wrote it down before the cooking scene too. But the cooking scene was my juicier one. But what I really liked is that when he walks into the party and he looks in the crowd, he's scanning, looking for her, and he sees her, and he seems almost lost in thought when he first sees her across the ballroom, and then she almost gets squished by a paper mache dog. But it's just such a really nice scene because at the end, like you said, they just kind of see each other. He pulls her away from the corner of the room, and you don't know where they're going. Are they leaving the party? Are they going to the dance floor? And later in the movie, we see that they went to the dance floor to have a nice little dance, and that is his nonverbal way of apologizing. I may or may not have painted it as a wedding gift for my beautiful husband.
Yes, it was the best wedding gift. Well, the only wedding gift I've ever received from my wife, but the best one as well. And you can see it behind me if you can see this video for some reason.
So the shot that you're talking about at the end of the film where we see Alma and Woodcock at the end of the party, they had shot the whole scene for the actual narrative itself where we get to see the whole, her and finding her and all that stuff that we just talked about. But they were at the end of the day, all the extras left. And PTA, they shot this within 30 minutes. I guess they just set up that one light, and he was like, "Oh, let's just grab this. Let's just do this." And just on the fly improvising, they have the best shot of the movie, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's just it's silent, alone, romantic, and it sells so well. And I too have it on my wall, and I think about it all the time.
It's beautiful.
No lie, one of my favorite shots in any movie ever. It is something that, since I've seen it in the theater, that shot has stayed in my mind and never left.
It's so romantic too.
That's the testament to good artists,
Mm-hmm.
that they don't need time. They just need to sit there and be like, let's do this. Might as well. Y'all haven't seen Captain Phillips, but they do something similar like that with Tom Hanks, and it becomes the best scene of that movie too.
Yeah, there's special scenes in movies where you can just close your eyes, and even if you haven't seen the movie in a long time, you can just imagine exactly what the scene looks like, and that's one of them. And I would say, there are other scenes in this movie that could qualify for that, but that scene's just so powerful and hits at the height of just when the movie's pulling your heartstrings at the end. It's just wonderful to see and think about.
Now, the editing in this movie, he pulls it back. There's a lot of stuff that's given and then taken, and he drops things perfectly when they're needed. And I think people complain. I think even PTA knows is like, yeah, I had 20 minutes too long on Magnolia. This one is a lean machine, and it's amazing.
Was it lean, or did he write an 88-minute movie that ended up being like 2 hours and 12 minutes? Because it only had 88 pages, right?
83.
83.
But it's still a lean movie. Like, comparatively, like to Magnolia, like where the movie's all over the place, they definitely could have had a lot more narrative here and a lot more like situations that occur within this world, but he keeps it very focused on Alma, very focused on Reynolds. Kat, what are you saying?
I was going to say, because you were talking about shots, does that make you want to lead into production value?
Production value!
Oh, Lord.
If y'all haven't seen Super 8, go watch it. But production value, what is the most impressive thing about this film, whether that's an aspect of a scene, whether it's the filmmaking, anything in between, any moment where everything's left on the screen, nothing's on the sidelines? Kat, what is that for you?
So, first off, this movie is so beautifully done, and it is such an original and authentic piece. And I know you guys are going to go into the cinematography. So I want to actually step aside and talk about how incredible Alma's narration is, because that narration breathes life and love into this story, and it is perfectly done. It is, like I said in the last episode, voiceover narrations can sometimes be a crutch, and it is something that needs to be handled very carefully and very smart and logically. So the fact that this is done this well is incredibly impressive. And I absolutely just love it. The whole narration is going on sometime in the future, and it's Alma talking to their doctor. And my question is, how far in the future is this? Is this years down the road when they have a family and kids and she's just telling their doctor about what she does with her husband to balance their relationship? Or is it earlier on? Let's say when he has her call the physician during that second poisoning during the action is the juice scene. When is it?
So they are at that house.
They're at the cottage, but she's wearing different clothes.
I think it's at some point, because I'm sure she had to call the doctor enough times and she had eventually had to clue him in to why he keeps getting sick.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking
So I
too.
imagine if it wasn't the second time, it had to be the third or fourth or whatever. It had to happen.
No, I think it was farther, honestly. I think it was after a while of them doing it, because while she's giving the narration, we see their kids. And sure, that can be the future, but the way I see it is she's looking back on their life together.
That's a good point.
And them having their child and their family, that is something she's reminiscing on with the doctor. At least that's what I'm thinking.
You're right on the narration too. It's really hard to do narration, a good narration. I think that's underrated. There's some movies that do a bad narration. Famously, the Blade Runner cut, Harrison Ford, on purpose does a bad.
But that's purposeful.
Yeah, it's a purposeful, but he does a really bad job on purpose, and it's a skill, because you got to be able to talk in a way that matches scenes that you haven't seen yet, or maybe you have seen them, but then you got to figure out what the director wants you to sound like. So it's not an easy skill, and you're right. The way she does it, it could come off as hacky if she didn't do it so well.
It's so eloquent.
And it's rare that I hear it good. Like Angourie Rice, she's in the new Mean Girls movie in the main role,
Okay.
like the Lindsay Lohan role.
Yep.
She was in The Nice Guys. She's the daughter, Ryan Gosling's daughter. She's the last person I heard. It was a random movie called Honor Society, like a high school rom-com type movie. That's the last time I heard good narration before this. So it's like it randomly comes to you, but it is so hard to get. But it's definitely the performer at the end of the day that is getting you there. Zach, production value. What's yours?
So part of me was thinking about the cinematography, but I knew Vikash would probably cover that, or if not, we'll cover it at some point. I actually want to talk about what is legitimately one of my favorite scores of all time by the great Johnny Greenwood.
Yes.
Let me give you a list of some of the things musically and movie-wise Johnny Greenwood has done. Okay, I wrote this down. So remember, Johnny Greenwood was the lead guitarist for Radiohead. So he's done OK Computer, Kid A, In Rainbows, the score for There'll Be Blood, Phantom Thread, Power of the Dog, Licorice Pizza, and Spencer, which I really actually liked and had a great score. The way that he uses in this movie, specifically traditional sounding instruments, string instruments, nothing modern. He'll use the same score and change the tempo, the loudness, what instruments were used to convey the mood of the screen. The score in this movie doesn't change very much, but when it comes up, it's in a new way. It's in a different way. It shows the evolution of Alma and Woodcock's relationship. And he makes it loud when it needs to be loud. He makes it soft when it needs to be soft. And they get rid of it when they don't need it. And the masterful use of his score, Johnny Greenwood, who is probably one of the modern masters of musical score making of our time, he is as important to this movie as PTA, Daniel Day-Lewis, Vicky Krieps, anybody. Without him, this movie would not be what it is, and it's an amazing job.
In this movie, it's a bit of a faux pas at times, like in filmmaking, to have your score playing while there's like dialogue happening.
Mm-hmm.
But in this movie, if it's 120 minutes, there's 80 minutes of music. There's a lot of music in this movie.
Yep.
And PTA was talking about how it's like, yeah, we contemplated every single edit where it's like, okay, how high is the music? How high does it need to be? Is it too high? Is it too low? And then it's like when he wanted it high, he kind of cranked it extra because it just sounds better in his opinion, which he and Nolan are on the same vibe with that. But it's like they definitely put in so much thought about that. And when he got to Johnny was like, I can't do this. This is a romantic movie. I ain't got. And PTA is like I know like Radiohead is like mopey dopey. Like that music that's what Radiohead is, right? Like he could write that in doles. But he's like, I pulled out the romance from Johnny Greenwood. That's what he said pretty much. And
He really
I love
did,
that.
because his score in There Will Be Blood is not like nothing like this. This score he did for Phantom Thread was just like nothing I've ever heard him ever do before. And that it just cements that Johnny Greenwood's a musical genius.
I know you haven't seen it, but Nicholas Britell, his work in If Beale Street Could Talk is probably the only thing I could compare to this. And even PTA was jealous of like Barry's shots in If Beale Street Could Talk.
Nicholas Britell is also the one who does the Succession music.
Good music.
Yeah, for all the Succession heads out there.
Good score in Succession, too.
Fantastic composer. One of the new ones. Yeah. So my production value moment of this movie, which we kind of beat to a pulp already, hyping it up, is the cinematography of this movie. I could argue the intercutting of this movie. I think the editing is fantastic in this movie and precise. And I want to give PTA his credit because I know people used to give him crap when he was younger. But what his gaffer, Michael Bauman, and I think his first AD, or his first cam, there's 4 guys together that kind of took on all the roles when it came to doing the DP work, director of photography work. And for anybody who doesn't know, typically you have your director and then you have your director of photography, your Roger Deakins, Robert Elswith, who PT has worked with for a long time. And they were just like, yeah, like we can kind of do this together. They did a bunch of Radiohead and like Haim videos where they didn't have Elswith, but like that core group of like 4 people were always there. So Michael Bauman is the guy with the light meter because they shoot film. And they just pulled off some fantastic work. I mean, Bob Elswith has his little piece about this movie, but my favorite part of this movie is all the car shots.
Yes.
Every single one of the
Yes.
shots with the cars, whether it's them zooming like a Fast and Furious movie, or it's like him whipping the car around and like opening the door to like so Alma can sit in the car. Anything like every single one of those shots.
They're racing from dinner so he can get laid.
Exactly. That's what I was gonna say. When she's like, "You look thirsty," and then it just cuts to him just driving like a bat out of hell, just as fast as possible.
Then the little tug into the bedroom. Oh, love it, love it. That's the kind of desire you want to see in your partner.
It's also a framing thing where it's like that part of the stairs where they have the shot.
Yep.
Before we see them go into the separate rooms, and then at that point where the whole point is that they're going into the same room. It's extremely well done. The aspect ratio for the movie is 1.85, and it looks fantastic. They shot film, blew it up to 70 where they needed to. But there's so many good shots in this movie. It could be as simple as when they first get to Woodcock's house after like their first date, and he stands up and he's like, "I need you to help me with something."
What a fucking
And when a man
move.
says that, you probably want to run. But I mean, this man, she like looks up at him, and like just the angle of like where she's looking up at him, and it's like, oh yeah, like this is horny.
He's so smooth too,
It's-
man. He's such a
so
smooth
smooth.
operator. Oh,
It is. It somehow
Smooth operator.
somehow super casual stuff is just so erotic between the two of them. I'm sorry. I searched the script, okay, and they only say hungry 4 times in the whole script. Do you know that is like the most erotic word to them? And it's like the hungry boy. You look hungry at dinner. I'm getting hungry at the end. And then one other time somewhere in between.
she straight up says he's thirsty at dinner.
She does. No, but that's at a different dinner.
When it came to like all that stuff, all that like whether it's the water, the food, like for as much as there is about dresses and stuff, there's a lot of food in this movie. And I was like, there's definitely a version of this movie where Reynolds is actually just like the biggest chef in the world. And then she comes into his kitchen or something, and then they have like some sort, like she's a waitress or something, and they have that relationship. So I could see where like there's definitely a lot of, hungry boy wants his mommy vibes, but whatever.
I see it.
They have a shot in this movie where after the scene of Reynolds falling on the dress and them having to repair it the entire night, where he comes back after he's kind of gotten better, and Alma's on the couch laying there sleeping, and he kind of wakes her up, and they start in this wide, and that entire scene is played within one shot where they have the dress that they have just fixed all night on the left side, and then Alma on the couch, and as they're going through, the shot just comes in slowly, pushes in to where the dress is out of the way, and it's just Alma and Woodcock on the bench together. And it signifies exactly the moment where it's like, oh yeah, they're on the same piece. They're on the same page, finally. Like, they're together. And when it comes to all this, there's so many good shots in this movie, but that's the one with, like, the most meaning where, oh yeah, like, it's simple, it's effective, but it hits you so hard. And there's no music in that moment. I'm pretty sure it's just silent. So it's like, it's almost even more touching. And I think it's an action movie thing, is any movie thing where if you have a lot of music and you take it out, then you start paying attention more. But if you have no music and then you turn on music, then you start paying attention more. And depending on how you edit your movies or you shoot your movies and everything in between, those moments subconsciously become more effective for your audience. And that scene right there is such a production value moment.
I really like that scene. And he walks in and she's asleep, and clearly, she's been up all night trying to repair this dress. It's very important to him, and she did everything she could, so and so. But he comes in and he puts little kisses on her feet to wake her up. And, I question that a little bit about what he's into. But,
It was hot. Tarantino loved it.
Yeah, thank you for making the joke. But he wakes her up very gently, and he says that he loves her and he doesn't want to be without her. And he asks her to marry him 3 times before she answers. She laughs and says yes, and she asks him back, which I really like, that it's not just her being asked. She's also asking him, because honestly, he's the one with the guard up, and it's
It's her movie. It's Alma's movie.
She's doing the narration. It's Alma's movie.
There's a couple things there. One, the camera just lingers so long on that moment, which is awesome because how long it takes her to answer yes, and the camera lingers and doesn't cut, just adds to the anticipation. Great choice. Two, it's kind of in that moment how, she talks about near the end of the movie how she wants him flat on his back, helpless and all that. She takes the power from him in that scene. He's asking, he's almost begging for her just to say something. Please say yes. And then finally, she's going to say yes the whole time, but she wants to see him beg for it. She wants to, and not even in a bad way or a narcissistic way, but that's how she likes it. She likes to have the power in the relationship. So she grabs it there by making him ask 3 times before she says yes. It's an awesome scene.
It's funny because this movie, y'all keep bringing it up that it's like, oh yeah, it's like they're kind of playing with each other. There's this old, like, I'd say Gujarati, like Indian word. It's Ramath, which is, it just means play, but it's like there's a beauty within that play. And that's what that is between them. It's that Ramath that's happening between them. That's like, yeah, that's a vibe. Like, that's like, you want that in your life. Not this toxic, but you want it in your life between your partners and you. Okay. Dialogues. Let's get into it. Zach, this script is fantastic. There's so much dialogue to love in this movie. What affected you the most between all the dialogue in this movie? And do not say chic, because I want to talk about it.
So, well, that is one of them I wrote down.
Okay, let me take that out of mine.
So, what I did instead, because I'm gonna be honest, there's stuff in this movie that is awesome. Kiss Me Before I'm Sick, all that sort of, stuff that it's like draws the heartstrings. But like I said in the beginning, this is a really funny movie to me. And so I wrote down the 3 funniest things from the movie, and I'm going to read them to you guys and just sit back and relax. Okay, I'm going to read my first dialogue. This one's a back and forth. So, Kat, I need you to take Alma, and I'm going to take Woodcock. Okay?
Okay.
So, I'll start it. What the hell is it about? Are you a special agent sent here to ruin my evening and possibly my entire life?
Why are you so rude to me? Why are you talking to me like this?
Is this my house? This is my house, isn't it? Is this my house?
Yes, this is your house. Of course it's your house.
Or did somebody drop me on foreign soil behind enemy lines? I'm surrounded on all sides.
What a question. You brought me here. It's you who brought me here.
When the hell did this happen? Who are you? Do you have a gun? You're here to kill me?
Why are you doing this?
Do you have a gun?
Stop it.
Where's your gun?
Stop
Where's
being
your
a child.
gun?
Stop.
Show me your gun. I think we did great.
This is great. 10 out of 10. Hire us.
That's about to sound fantastic on the edit.
It doesn't matter how many times I hear this whole back and forth.
It's so funny.
I am like belly laughing. From the first time in the theater to when I watched it last week, I was belly laughing with how funny they are in this back and forth.
And it's funny because you know how much of a hissy fit person, like high maintenance individual that Reynolds is. And to see him go at this, like go this way, it's so funny.
Okay, let me give you my other 2. These aren't back and forths. So the other one was in the beginning with breakfast, where he says, I cannot begin my day with a confrontation, please. I'm delivering the dress today, and I cannot take up space with confrontation. I simply do not have time for confrontations. Really sets the tone for who he is. And then this one is probably the most one that people know, but it's like, chic? Oh, don't you start using that filthy little word, chic. Whoever invented that ought to be spanked in public. I don't even know what the word means. What is that word? Fucking cheek? They should be hung, drawn, and quartered. Fucking chic. It's the only time he curses in the movie.
So that is also my line. I will say a few things. I did bring up that this script is only 83 pages and it runs longer than that, but I think there's a lot of subtext in this movie. There's a lot of acting where the dialogue in this movie, where these lines like the chic line are freaking hilarious, but there's no need. There's like the lack of dialogue in a lot of scenes works so well, where it's like, is this man supposed to write dialogue to where it's like, yeah, of course she's pissed, like she gets mad and like does this whole thing with the butter at the dining table, and it's hilarious, but there's no dialogue behind it. And I think there's a lot of choices that he makes in this movie that are fantastic. They're simple but effective. And it's like a lot of filmmakers don't put this much love into their movies anymore, and it sucks. And this I give this movie a lot of credit for what it does right.
Yeah, what's your quotes?
So I'm going to go in chronological order and remove the things that y'all have already said. Starting with Reynolds to Cyril after the woman says that she would like to be buried in one of his dresses. he says to his sister, "You'd dig her up and sell the dress again." I just really like that he knows that his sister is just hardballing it all the time. She's a sassy bitch and I love her. She's a fucking queen. She's an underrated character. I also think that before the dinner scene, when everyone's gone from the house, Reynolds walks in and he says to Alma, "What is this?" She says, "I love you, Reynolds." And he goes, "Yes, but what is this?" He just ignores her confession of love. She's definitely a acts of service, love language person. And he is not working with it. And it is so funny because she's like, "I love you. I did this thing for you." He's like, "Why? Why are you doing this? Do you have a gun?"
In that same scene, he's also comes in from his Thursday night walk.
Yep, his routine.
And then he gets inside and he's like, his first thing was, "Where's Cyril? Where's my sister?
Yep.
Why is she not here? Where have you sent her?" So it's like
when did she leave?
Like he has a thing where it's like he does love and care for his sister more than most people do. They're partners in business. And it's almost like Alma doesn't know where she fits in and she's trying to get into that relationship. She's like, "Where's my piece?" And she comes in and, drops her balls on the desk and does it. But this scene is kind of in between all that where he is very much like, "Where did you send my partner? Where's my work wife?"
Yeah, seriously.
And it's just like, yeah, it's like, yeah, so when it comes to dialogue between Lesley Manville's Cyril and Woodcock, the lack of dialogue between them, even though, so we know the level of relationship that they have, but we as audience members are never let into the relationship. The entire movie, we still don't know what they talk about or what's going on in their heads besides like, should I get rid of this girl now? Besides that, it's like, we don't really hear much from her. They don't give her much juice, but it's like her main juice is like, you need to understand who Reynolds is and who this man is if you're trying to get into this house. And she thinks that she's not going to succeed, but Alma ends up succeeding in this relationship.
Well, I did just think of one that doesn't really fit any other category. It's more of an action. So when they're getting like breakfast or lunch or something outside, it's a quick scene and she's loudly...
Their honeymoon.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And she's loudly... I think she's either loudly scraping something buttering toast. And he just looks...
No. She's eating
cereal.
cereal.
She's
eating
very
loudly,
cereal.
which she does over and over, and it's really funny. And he looks to the side and he just goes... He just breathes out, exhales. But the thing is, it almost looks like he's having indigestion. The way he does it, it's like he has heartburn or indigestion or something, where he's like forcibly like just like, "Oh, really again?" That little, it's not a dialogue per se, but it's like a really funny thing he does that cracks me up every time.
But that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of stuff in this movie where it is dialogue. It's literally what an action movie does. I'm telling you, this movie makes me think that PTA would be the best action movie director because he fundamentally understands what it is to make an action movie. This is what it is. This is an action movie without the fighting. That's what it is.
I see it.
It's just as funny. It's just as sharp. It is just as like romantic where it needs to be.
There.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So what I also have written down is Reynolds to Alma when he's sick. Whatever it is, if you fuss, I'll die right here. Drama queen galore, all over. He's just... Do not fuss over me, please, for the love of God. Like, I love that he's just like, don't do it. And I mean, then she does, and he really likes it. So the most important quote of this whole film is the quote that is in our wedding reading. "If he didn't wake up from this, if he wasn't here tomorrow, no matter, for I know he'd be waiting for me in the afterlife or some safe celestial place, in this life, in the next one after. And for whatever there is on the road that follows from here, it would only require my patience to get to him again. You see, to be in love with him makes life no great mystery."
So when we wanted to have that read at our wedding, it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, to be honest. We were like, this is a really great like thing to be read at a wedding, taken at face value. But when you know the movie and the context of it, it's so funny. It's hilarious. So when it was being read at the wedding...
Oh, no, I was sitting there cracking up.
We were laughing.
You were probably the only other one cracking up, which because no one else up there has probably seen the movie.
No.
We were cracking up at the reading. We're trying to hold it in because we're on camera and no one else knows it's a joke and think it's a wonderful passage. And we're just
laughing at a reading that
really,
we chose.
Yeah, really, the reading wasn't a little joke. It was a little joke between us. That's all it was. Between only me and Kat knew. It's like when he sews those things, those messages into the dresses he makes. You know, it's a secret for him to know. That was a secret for only me and Kat to know, and you, of course, to know.
So, the Layla, if you haven't seen Goodfellas, go watch it. The Layla is fantastic song in that movie. So for any needle drop, the best score use, whatever it is, this movie with Johnny Greenwood is just something else. They have some other pieces in there. But Kat, the Layla, what did you vibe with this movie?
The whole score is just fantastic. I listened to it when prepping my notes for this episode. And I looked at my notes and I mentioned the use of score and the lack of score 14 times throughout the movie. I said great score, like quite literally like 10 times. And they do a great job of swelling the music to really feed into things and dropping it to really make a scene heavy or more serious or more meaningful. And just the way that it's done throughout the whole film is phenomenal.
And I think there's a thing where this score, it is fantastic. It's definitely one of the best things that's been done in the 2010s period.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's, you know, if you had to count 20, maybe even 10, this is one of them. And when it comes to any romance movie, I know I can cite Bollywood out the butt for it, is that romance movies need good music. And 90% of the Indian songs that I listen to are romance songs. And they're amazing. And this is amazing too.
It is. I've already talked way too long about how good he is in composing this score. Kat, was there a specific one that you thought was the best use?
So, very specifically, I'm circling back to her cooking the poison mushrooms. The use of score and sound editing in that scene is the best. I'm sorry.
That was mine. That was mine.
Don't pass things to me because we have the same stuff. Go ahead, talk about it.
That score is Phantom Thread 3. It's in the background, and then you're right. What's good about it's already a good score, and it's the heaviest, like the loudest use of it. But what's good about it is that they know the exact right time to just make it as loud as possible, like we talked about earlier. And so, yeah, that was also mine. It's a great score. Every score in this movie is great, but that one matched the best with what was happening on screen. That's the only difference.
Kat, do you like Phantom Thread?
I don't know. Is it obvious that we do? I love this movie. It's one of my favorites.
Kat, do you like Taylor Swift?
Yes, I was a Swiftie originally.
Well, Taylor Swift wrote a song based on this movie, and it's totally about Alma. It's called Mastermind. It's on Midnights, apparently. I've heard mixed reactions about this song. Do you have any thoughts about this song? Because I listened to it for the first time, and I was like, "Oh, this is Alma. This is Alma."
This is several people in several different films and books and so on. I will
Good for her.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
It works beautifully for this film, honestly. The first time that she poisons him, it starts this vibe where it's like, yeah, I planned this. Yeah, bitch, I made you this way, and I made it perfect. And, you know, he learns about it and eventually is fine with it or understands it and whatever. But this song is her confessing, yeah, I manipulated the situation. What you thinking?
Poor Travis Kelce.
He likes it.
Nobody. Oh, we had okay.
Hey, as long as she doesn't poison him with mushrooms.
That's why the Chiefs are doing so bad. She's been poisoning the team.
Oh. Rough, buddy.
I don't even know. We're in a fantasy league, and I don't even know. I put that shit on
you
mute.
Lost. Let's keep going.
I lost too.
Kat, you know who should have been in this movie? Come on, guys. Let's recast the role. Kat, who would you like to put in this movie?
Okay. The cast, at least the main characters, are perfectly casted. I will not ever touch that. Now, I did consider who would be good in this film. And I think we can replace Cyril Woodcock, who is played by Lesley Manville. We can replace her with Hannah Waddingham. I think...
She's too hot. She's too hot.
No, hold on.
Guys, I think I gotta go home. I gotta get off the pod.
I think Hannah Waddingham.
Hannah is fantastic.
She could do it.
Of course, she could do it. She'd be amazing in that role.
I was looking at her.
She could do the main role too. I mean, if they genre bended this, gender bended this.
She could absolutely do Reynolds.
She would be the murderous Reynolds.
Oh yeah,
murderous. Well,
she could do it. Anyway, I was looking at Hannah Waddingham's filmography and such.
IMDb.
Yeah, and I was looking at what she's been in. I totally forgot that she is in Game of Thrones as the Shame Nun. And
for those who don't know, she's also in Ted Lasso.
She's in Ted Lasso. She's in several
And she's
things.
also in all of our dreams.
She is in my dreams.
I know she's in yours.
But I think she could totally do that role. You know, she's got the sass and the sophistication needed. She's just not the proper age for what I would see for this character, but we can figure it out. Like I've said before, we can throw makeup on her. We can make her less pretty.
She could be the younger sister.
She could be a younger sister.
I don't think
she
that's
can't
possible.
be made less pretty.
She's got the right height for it. I'll tell you that.
I don't
though.
think that's possible.
Yeah.
She's tall, lady.
Ooh, you're right. DDL. Daniel's pretty tall.
The height
He's
would
a tall
work.
man. They would work. But yeah, no, I think Hannah Waddingham would be fantastic in this supporting role.
I love it. Do you have any other recasts?
No, that's it. I realized I just made the best pick initially, so I didn't want to make more.
And for me, I have to, I have the resounding same thing that I wouldn't recast anybody else. And I literally didn't even put 2 seconds of thought into it. The only thought that came to my head was, I was like, Reynolds, who's a man-child that I know? And the first one that came to mind was Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was like, he could totally play the crap out of that. And
it would be more messy.
It would be different. It'd be a bit more
could see
bombastic, but like that's the first person that came to my mind, and I was like, yeah, he kind of murdered that.
I got two. Like you guys said, I'm not recasting Daniel Day-Lewis, and I'm not casting, Vicky Krieps. I have two. Do you guys want the serious one or the funnier one first?
Serious.
Serious. Okay.
Serious.
My serious one is that also recasting Lesley Manville. I thought about Jean Smart. You see her from the Watchmen TV show, Hacks, Mayor of Easttown, Babylon, Fargo Season 2.
She'd be good.
So her demeanor might be a little bit intense for the role, but she would be able to go back and forth with DDL in a way that no one else can. She's got that sharpness to the way that she says things that there could probably even be more scenes in the movie with her and DDL going back and forth.
Jean Smart is quietly confident, and that's what Manville plays in the film. And she's got BDE like there's no business.
Imagine her delivering the line, "Don't pick a fight with me. You certainly won't come out alive."
Oh, she would eat that up. She would eat that up.
That's kind of hot. I ain't gonna lie.
Oh gosh. Okay. Vikash talking about gilfs. Wait, you need to hear my funny one, okay? Vikash, turn the TikTok camera on. This is good. The French princess who comes in the middle of the movie, played by Louisa Richter. Okay, she does a great job, but I would recast her with Meghan Markle.
Yeah. Oh my God, you killed
dying.
him. He's dead. Oh, my audio's
gosh.
off the charts. I'm sorry.
R.I.P.
Yeah.
Vikas died at 11:17 p.m. on January 5th, 2024.
Well,
Rip.
I figured a real princess could play it, and Diana's not around, so you can ask my Megan.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. to the big goat.
Megan has some acting. She was in Suits, right? Wasn't it Suits? I've never seen that show, but she has some acting
Suits,
experience.
She was very good in it.
I mean, obviously
show.
this wouldn't work in the movie, but it would be hilarious if it's like, here's the princess, she shows up, and it's like freaking Meghan Markle.
Yeah. You know what?
Only
That'd
if
be hilarious.
Audrey Hepburn was alive.
Oh, Audrey would be good if she was alive.
No. It should be Anne Hathaway. It should be Anne Hathaway.
Yeah.
She's the Princess of Genovia.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
This is a proto Princess Diaries 3. I tell you that.
Okay.
It's a Princess
At some
Diaries
point,
3. I'm trying to make that movie
I
happen.
will run the Princess Diaries movies if I can get enough people on it, because those are my childhood movies.
What do you mean?
Let's go.
I'm done. Let's do 1 and 2. I'm
Okay,
down.
let's turn off the
I'm
pod.
down.
Let's go ahead and do
Gary
it.
Marshall,
Yeah,
goated.
change it up.
Yeah, halfway
Hit me
through.
in a few months with that one.
Let's go to hot takes.
Keep that bit of you saying, "Let's move on."
Okay, I really mean it. Let's move on.
On to hot takes then. Kat, do you have any hot takes about this gem of a movie?
I'm really scared I'm taking Zach's hot take because we've been on the same wavelength this whole time.
Guns are out. Do you have your gun?
I'm ready. I have
Shooter's
guns.
going to shoot your shot behind the enemy lines. Let's go.
This relationship is pretty healthy towards the end of the movie. And honestly, the way that they have it balanced and everything, it's fine. It's okay. It's consensual. And I can break it down some more. But Zachary, go ahead. Give me some feedback real quick.
That's really interesting because my hot take is that I'd be willing to poison myself if I needed to have a happy marriage.
Yeah. See?
But see, I think it speaks
Me
to.
too.
I think this movie is a
I
thing
feel like
where
I do.
it's like the framing of it makes the framing of it like the gothic romance bit of it is a bit off to where it's like usually it's supernatural. With this one, it's almost sadistic, and it's like anybody outside of this relationship might not
Yep.
understand it, but the entire movie is an argument about understanding it.
I
right?
appreciate you
Yeah.
taking our point seriously because I'm just
No,
but
beaming.
Mine's
no,
serious.
because I'm
I mean,
being serious.
I mean, mine's as
I'm being
serious
serious
as it
too.
can be. I mean,
Are you not willing to poison yourself
am.
and be
of
sick?
course I am.
Okay, then.
It reminds me of the line from Inception, always the old man, when they come out of the dream where they're all dreaming for like hours upon hours, and that's where they live their real lives. The old man tells Leo's characters, like, who are you to judge, right? And in our lives, it's a whole other thing where it's like, who are we to judge anybody? But in this situation, if it's healthy for them, who are we to judge?
Exactly.
It ain't me, but it's crazy, and the argument works. Interesting.
So Reynolds is selfish and inconsiderate, rude, and he takes out his frustrations on others. And, he spirals a bit and then becomes more toxic as he gets kind of lost in the weeds of his life. And Alma, I don't really have any toxic traits. I mean, she can be passive aggressive, but I don't want to call that toxic because so can I.
What's toxic are the mushrooms.
She's willing to make certain compromises for her partner,
Yeah.
but she wants to ensure that if I'm giving myself over to this person, I want to make sure that as a partner in life that they're giving me something back for that.
For sure.
And the entire argument of her poisoning him is for the affection. It's for him to be fine with them having kids and having this life together rather than separate. That's why I say by the end of the movie, when it comes to the omelet, that's them doing the handshake. That's it right there. They're in it for life.
And now that first time that she poisons him, it's not consensual. And, I don't condone poisoning your partner, especially intentionally, secretly, and not consensually.
I do.
Zachary, do not poison me. I will fight you.
You know, sometimes you just gotta poison a hoe. Like,
Is that why you get me ice cream? I'm lactose intolerant. You're poisoning me.
I'm just saying only one of us likes mushrooms and it's not you.
Anyway. So that sounded real questionable. He's talking the food.
guys, I'm gonna Uber Eats
Not the
over
magic
some
ones.
mushroom risotto, some mushroom omelets right
I'll eat it.
now.
So, after that initial situation, the poisoning turns consensual. It may not have been a spoken agreement prior to dinner, but Alma does say her intent while he's slowly chewing his food, and he's waiting for her to speak. She does, and his nonverbal agreement is him swallowing it and eating it. And, they both have a variety of good and bad traits, but fortunately, Reynolds found his match in Alma. She's willing to speak her mind. She's willing to stand up for herself and those she cares for. And she doesn't take shit from anyone, not even her partner. And she'll call him out on his shit. So being able to find a way to balance themselves in their relationship, and if that, instead of having some sort of conversation, if that is an act, say becoming ill for a few days so then you can be humbled, who are we to judge? They both agreed on it. It's consensual. It balances their relationship. And you know what? It makes them happy and it works. Hell yeah. Good on you. I'm not going to judge you. Also, I don't want to condone poisoning people. Can I just make that clear? Please do not send your partner to the hospital. Zachary?
I condone nothing.
I think the opening of the movie is the comparison, which is like Joanna, the lady friend that he has before Alma, where it's like, aren't you gonna say something? And it's like she wants something from him, and he's this overly busy, high in the sky dude who's not a good fit for her. But it's this whole movie is making that argument. Like, why are Alma telling us, the audience, like, this is why me and my husband are perfect together.
Mm-hmm.
We might have this process within our love, but it's like, it's the only way I can get my husband to love me, and he agrees to this.
I don't think it's the only way that she can get him to
not
love her.
but I think it's the only way
To
to
get him out of his head.
to have affection, overt affection towards her. It's interesting. I don't know. See, that's why it's like I say, saying that I love this, it sounds weird.
I love it.
And it's like,
no, I
Zach,
love it.
when are you gonna poison your wife?
I'm the one being poisoned. Why would I poison her? I'm the woodcock in this scenario. I'm just saying.
You're toxic and rude and
Yeah,
inconsiderate.
I'm toxic, rude, and I need to be put on my place sometimes. That's woodcock, right?
You just want to be babied, you little butthole.
I don't know how many times I gotta say it. I'm the
Classic.
woodcock here.
So is this a BDSM movie?
No, it's not physical pain.
So it's like,
I don't know. Being
BDS
ill is kind of
mind.
physical.
When are we doing that one movie where Dakota Johnson gets BDSM?
50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah, when are we doing that? Is that next month?
No.
Oh yeah, I'll take Back to the Future off.
Can I
We
do a
that. That'll
recasting
work.
couch for that?
I think that's a great
I
romantic
want
film.
DDL to be the guy in that. That's my recasting couch.
I agree.
Oh, I'm sorry. We don't call
Instead
it
of Jamie
recasting couch.
Dornan.
That is a different podcast that I listen to too much. Let's move on. I'm off topic.
My hot take for this movie is not related to this movie. It's an overall thing where every time I hear someone be like, "Oh, PTA's best movie," it is 9 times out of 10 it's not this movie, and it should be half or more of the time that I'm hearing that Phantom Thread is his best movie.
Yep.
Or in his top 3. People do not appreciate this film for what it is, and I think, is it because it's a smaller movie? He always makes smaller movies. I think there's a lot of passion behind this film, and I don't know why people aren't discovering it. Are people not watching this movie? Well, I don't know what the issue is, but this movie is top 1 or top 2 from him, and I'm inclined to think he agrees.
This kind of steps on legacies a little bit, but I think the best way to think of at the top of his filmography is like a Mount Rushmore. That Phantom Thread, The Master, and There Will Be Blood is in his Mount Rushmore, because There Will Be Blood is his most common best movie. Probably Boogie Nights behind that is his most common best movie. After that, it gets kind of hazy on what people like. But I really think that Phantom Thread is at the top of what he's done so far. I think I can get into it now. It's not my favorite for him, actually. It's my second favorite, but it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And I think he reached a height here that...
But The Master doesn't get its credit either.
That's my favorite. And it's, I never thought Paul Thomas Anderson is one of my favorite directors. I never really thought of it that way. But he has 2 of my top, probably 3 favorite movies of the 2010s, which is a pretty big deal.
I think the thing is that he's a successor to Robert Altman in the best ways possible. And what this Valley Boy has been able to achieve with this movie is something special. To say this man is like, California dude writing this deep British dialogue that feels like it's sci-fi dialogue to me, for all I care. That's what it sounds like in my head. And he does it well. It sounds so good in this movie. I think like y'all said, when you saw this movie, it's like not enough, like, I don't know, people saw this movie, but it felt like it was an older crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie's not made for them. No offense,
No.
but it's like, it's made for young folks. And I hope folks go and watch this movie because it's got the juice. It's the sort of juice that's a contemporary juice that we don't have in any other era per se, unless it's in our era, because that is some good stuff.
So I don't know how to define this, but I feel like every year there's one movie that comes out that doesn't really get picked up, but because of like Twitter memes and GIFs and everything, the movie ends up, getting more hype. And I feel like this is one of the original ones to do that. You saw it with this. You saw it with First Reformed. You saw it with, oh God, I was blanking out another example.
Will God ever forgive us? Who knows?
Yeah, from the movie. Sorry, I forgot. I blanked. That was from the
Bro,
movie.
the line
There's a bunch of GIFs and stuff in that movie that I saw, reposted a ton on Twitter that got it some sort of like engagement. There's always movies every year that I think that the film heads really love that maybe don't get what people want. And then you just start to see the love for it grow through people putting memes out. I reposted on my own Twitter. There's somebody who does Photoshops Paddington into a scene every day, right? And they Photoshop Paddington into that last scene of them dancing in the New York Times.
New Year's
Time.
New
Wow,
Year's
I can't
Eve.
talk. New Year's
New York
Eve.
Times.
I was doing NYE in my head, and my brain was going New York.
You can restart.
No, I'm good. So, anyways, I feel like there's a movie every year that gets picked up like that, and this was the movie that year. But you're right, a lot of people still haven't seen it because it's a costume drama, and a lot of people don't want to see costume dramas. How many costume dramas come out every year that just aren't that great, you know?
Yeah.
I will be the first in line. This entire podcast is made to be about love. But if I'm a hater, the movies I hate to watch are movies like this. Little Women. I didn't want to watch it. It does not fascinate me. When it comes to period movies with older clothes and this stuff, I don't want to watch it.
Just a historic drama.
But when Greta Gerwig, when Phantom Thread, movie Emma 2020, Anya Taylor-Joy, when these movies come out and they do something novel within it, this stuff has my attention and I love it. I think the movie this year that is kind of on the Twitter geist is Past Lives, and I hope everyone checks that out too.
I would say Almost the Killer was that movie this year. But anyways, I've seen it memed a bit.
I mean,
yeah.
It's been Past Lives all year though.
I think we're just on different Twitter circles. Let's keep it going.
The Oscars. If me and Zach talk about one pair of Oscars, 1 year of movies in the last 5 to 10 years, too much, it is 2017. This is the 2018 Oscars. I think that this was a fantastic year of film. 2023 has been pretty close to it. Zach, this movie, Phantom Thread, did it deserve more Oscars? Who should have been nominated? Who shouldn't have been? Are there any wins missing? Whatever. Oscars, talk to me.
So there's a lot going on this year, so we're only going to cover a few categories because Phantom Thread was involved in a lot of them and unfortunately didn't win many of them. Phantom Thread was nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor, Daniel Day-Lewis for Best Actor, Best Supporting Actress, surprisingly not Vicky Krieps, but was Lesley Manville. It was also nominated for Costume Design, which it won. That was its only win, and also was nominated for Directing.
And music.
And Best Score. Best Score.
Krieps should have been nominated as a lead actress for this film. And I will give the Oscars all the crap in the world for nominating and winning on movies like The Darkest Hour. I have all the love in the world for Gary Oldman.
Mm-hmm.
I have zero of that love for Winston Churchill. But it's like, why are y'all making this? Why are y'all making these dramas that are pointless make wins? Like, I don't know, hate to Jessica Chastain, but she won hers for that. So many people win it. But why did DDL deserve the win over this man?
Okay, you went to 3 different categories, so let's pick one. So let's.
What do you mean?
You jumped around.
I did. I jumped,
which is
fine.
fine. It's fine.
Mainly,
but
I started with one, but I'm talking about lead actor.
Let's look over all the actors that were nominated for leading role because it's a pretty good group actually. So Gary Oldman did win for Darkest Hour. Darkest Hour I did not find to be a very good movie, but Gary Oldman's performance was very good in it. It was, the whole like wearing a fat suit, having a bunch of makeup, which is that type of movies like to win. But he did do a good job.
So Jim Carrey should have won an Oscar for The Grinch.
Honestly,
that's
we
what
can
it
go back
says
to that
me.
year whenever we do that movie, and we'll discuss it.
We will do that movie.
So the other nominees were Timothée Chalamet for Call Me by Your Name, Daniel Kaluuya for Get Out, and Denzel Washington for Roman J. Israel, which I totally forgot was a movie. So Daniel Kaluuya was really freaking good in Get Out. But really, this was a year that I really thought he should have won for Phantom Thread. Like, this is kind of a weaker year. In my head, I thought this was the Leo year, but this wasn't the Leo year. This was a winnable year for him for actor in a leading role.
This was Chalamet is his only real competition. Yeah, sure. Put on a fat suit, put on the makeup, be a person in history and win your Oscar. Elvis, didn't happen. Tammy Faye, whatever, Jessica Chastain, it happened for her. It's happened so many other times. I'm sick of it. But it's like, guys, come on. Like, Timothée Chalamet in Call Me By Your Name, fantastic. It's his best performance to date. And I would have thrown in Phantom Thread as the win still, honestly. I think Timmy's the only competition there in that category. I would have put so many other actors in other movies instead.
Do you think they gave it to Gary Oldman because they felt obligated to?
Did he win one before this?
Yes, because the fact is that Gary Oldman has been one of the greatest actors in the last 30 years. The man never misses. He's always in his character roles. He's always playing character roles, typically not leads.
Mm-hmm.
And then they never give him Oscars. And then now they had the confluence of all this stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, we and Zach talk about it all the time. It's like the Oscars always give people awards too late. And this is
Yeah.
one of those.
They do. And they also like to give people awards sometimes for the most acting instead of the best acting. And Gary Oldman has to carry that movie because it's not a very good movie. So he carries it in a way that even though Daniel Day-Lewis doesn't carry, but does a lot in Phantom Thread, it's still a good movie. And Gary Oldman is in every single scene pretty much. He's always huffing and puffing and doing accents. So it's the most acting, which is why he won.
What is DDL doing? He's
doing
doing the same
and that's
shit.
But
the
he is, but
and
it's
that's
not
the
as obvious, you know?
And that's the crazy
I know.
thing. Last week we talked about Iron Claw on the podcast, and that movie comes off. It technically is a biopic,
Mhm.
but that movie is almost an antithesis to whatever The Darkest Hour and all this other crap is. Yeah, it's probably going to get Zac Efron a nomination, but it is deserved because the emotional drama isn't overplayed. It is like the heart of the movie, and it actually makes sense that it's there. The movie is warranted, where The Darkest Hour, these other biopics are not warranted at all.
Vicky is an actress, not a supporting actress in this movie, right?
I would argue that, yes.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay. So she didn't get nominated. Let me read you who was nominated. Sally Hawkins for Shape of Water. Deserved.
I understand that.
Margot Robbie for I, Tonya.
One of her
Saoirse
best.
Ronan for Lady Bird. Deserved.
Yep.
Frances McDormand for 3 Billboards. The winner. Deserved. Meryl Streep for The Post. The Oscars have this thing where they love to nominate Meryl Streep for any role that she has. And Meryl Streep's a great actress, legendary. But if she does a role, they nominate her at this point.
No late to that lady, that lady,
Vicky
but
Krieps
like,
should have had her spot.
did any of y'all actually?
Yeah.
Did y'all watch Welcome Foster Jenkins Home? Whatever. Like
What?
this lady, like you could literally put any name of a movie. It could be like Donkey on a Horse, and they would just see Meryl Streep and nominate her for it. She
Yeah.
could be playing a piece of poop for 3 hours and be like, Meryl is so good.
I'm just imagining annoying orange style poop.
Oh, no.
That's what I was thinking about. I forgot the name of that thing, so I went with
Yeah,
Donkey.
Meryl's a great actress, but her role in that was like she showed up and she owned the newspaper, and she didn't do anything special in that.
You know who's better in that movie?
Everybody.
Saul Goodman.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah, everyone.
2 Oscars that they definitely left out in this movie were the sound mixing
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
and the editing.
Yep.
Because I think this is one of his best mixed movies for sound in terms of, how loud things are, how loud the score is, all that sort of stuff, how loud the dialogue is.
Mm-hmm.
And the editing itself is, like I said, it's the opposite of what people have been complaining about when it came to Magnolia. This is him pulling back, pulling, and pushing where he needed to, and it's a perfect art of editing in this film.
Do you want to hear the sound editing and mixing for this year? Because it's pretty stacked. So it's the same for both categories. They didn't change who was nominated. It's Dunkirk, which was the winner. Great
Okay.
editing
Makes
mixing. Baby Driver
sense.
Driver did a good job with it.
Makes
Blade
sense.
Runner 2049.
Yeah.
Sonically present.
Shape of Water.
Sonically
Yeah.
present.
And Star Wars The Last Jedi. Like, the pretty good
I get
slate.
it.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
see it.
The bottom 2, I think they have fantastic people on those bottom 2, Shape of Water, Last Jedi, but I'd argue Phantom Thread over both
Yeah,
of
you
those
could argue
easily.
it, but it's not like it's the worst snub in the world.
Oh no, not at all. It's like when it comes to movies like The Last Jedi or the other
Shape
one,
of
it's
Water.
like these people are like at the best when it comes to sound stuff. Usually they're the people who are working at the highest level in their craft, and they're doing amazing work because it's so hard to do movie effects in the first place, sound effects. So
It didn't
understandable.
get nominated for any of the writing ones. That's weird.
That's wild. It's an original screenplay,
Original.
Yeah,
right?
it didn't get nominated
That's-
for original.
What's the original?
Get Out, Big Sick, Lady Bird,
Mhm.
Shape of Water, 3 Billboards.
Who won?
You can put that over a few of those. Yeah.
Dang.
Oh, Get Out one.
But that's like a stacked year of
Yeah.
that's a stacked year of like scripts.
I
Like,
mean, it's a good
like,
year.
If you have
yeah.
to go back and look.
Yeah,
That's a
when
stacked
looking at
list.
the Oscars for this year, I did write down, like, of note, The Shape of Water and Lady Bird. I'm like, honestly, anything where The Shape of Water beat over Phantom Thread, I can see it. Like, directing and music original scores where The Shape of Water beat Phantom Thread. And I wrote both times, I understand this one, but I don't prefer it over Phantom Thread, but I get it. Like, I see it, I understand.
So for cinematography, they couldn't be nominated for an Oscar.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you don't have a person listed as your cinematographer, they don't get nominated. And in London, they don't have strong unions, so they were able to get away with not naming one of the Michael Bauman or PTA as a DP.
Oh.
But then
They
I assume they
canceled
did
them
have
out.
to for Licorice Pizza because they do like the union here, the ASC is actually much stronger in America than it is over there.
Okay.
And it's an interesting thing, you know, guilds matter, all these unions matter.
No, that makes sense.
So before we do talk about Best Picture, because we should talk about it since it was nominated, I do want to go over Best Score because I think this was a really good year for score, and not every year is great for it. So Shape of Water did win. That was Alexander Desplat. That was a good score. We also had Hans Zimmer's Dunkirk score.
Desplat,
Yeah.
bro.
Okay.
We had Hans Zimmer doing Dunkirk, which is one of his best scores. We have John Williams doing The Last Jedi, which, let's be fair, John Williams didn't do a ton in it, but it's John Williams. He's a legend. I have no problem with that, you know? And then we had 3 billboards for Carter Burwell, which is fine. But Johnny Greenwood was also nominated for Phantom Thread, which was great because from what I could tell, I think this is the first time he's been nominated, but I might be wrong. I don't know if he got nominated for There Will Be Blood. I didn't look into that.
And Shape of Water won that category.
Oh yeah, I did, which is kind of out of all those, I don't know if I would have picked that.
I mean, I
It's fine. It's a
I
fine.
get
It's a
it.
good score.
I think Desplat is very much favored.
It's a good score.
But I think the thing is that this is another time where Desplat beat out someone else who was more worthy.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, for 2015 Oscars, 2014 movie year, where he won an Oscar, I think for Grand Budapest Hotel.
Good one.
And I hear so much Interstellar out in these streets.
That's a tough year though.
Interstellar is like the best piece of like scoring made in the 2010s that has been, you know, put into pop culture still. And that, I don't know, whatever. I respect this plot, but Johnny Greenwood did fantastic.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some people who don't care about the Oscars. Let me just get through the Best Picture real quick. This was the year that Shape of Water won, and even though it was a good movie, it was it kind of instantly has been forgotten. And we can debate if we're never going to do a Shape of Water one probably, but we can debate that in some other Guillermo del Toro based podcast.
Pan's Labyrinth coming
we can talk
soon.
about Pan's Labyrinth, but because Shape of Water is probably not in his top like 3, but Shape of Water won.
It is. It is though.
Well, Shape of Water won. Call Me by Your Name was a nominee. Darkest Hour was a nominee. Dunkirk, Get Out, Lady Bird, Phantom Thread, The Post, and 3 Billboards. That's a pretty good lineup, honestly. Like, it's not a lot of. I know some people didn't like 3 Billboards. I thought it was a good movie. I don't love Darkest Hour.
I think that was a fantastic movie.
It got caught up in some politics, I remember, which I'm not going to get into. That caused some issues. Darkest Hour is the only one here that I actually didn't like. The rest of these are good. And Phantom Thread was never really going to win this award. It getting nominated was actually a surprise. I think when it came to like the 10 nominees, Phantom Thread was one of those that was kind of on the edge because it wasn't very popular in terms of viewership. Then not a lot of people went and saw it. So it getting nominated was actually like, oh, this is nice. It wasn't one of those things where it got snubbed. You know, it was never going to win this year based on how the races were going.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Best Picture, I'm glad it's there. I can't complain. That's a good note to go out on for the Oscars for this movie, where it did get a lot of L's, where it's like this movie didn't get respected, but
it got recognition.
It's got enough. So I can't complain too hard.
Yeah, I'm just happy it got nominated.
Besides Daniel.
I mean, I wish it won some things too, but
and Vicky Krieps should have been nominated.
Oh yeah,
this is a no-brainer.
That I'm gonna be salty about
because she's the lead of this movie. How are y'all not gonna nominate the lead of the movie? That is like fantastic. So legacies. This movie came out 2017 Christmas, a fantastic release date. So 6 years down the line, we have a prism of what pops out to us for the people behind the screen and in front of the screen in terms of how things have aged.
Okay, so we actually covered a lot of the things I wanted to talk about with legacies. We talked about where this is with PTA's movies. We talked about how Johnny Greenwood is an elite group of composers now. One thing I wanted to talk about was, so Daniel Day-Lewis didn't win the Oscar for this, but where is this movie in his list of performances? Because he's won 3 Oscars, which is a mark for Best Actor, which is a mark not many other people have ever done. So where is...
He's the most winning actor.
Yeah, he might have the most. I'm not...
If I remember correctly.
So
He's
I
the
think
most
for
one. I think
actress,
it's 3 or 4.
more than 3, but for actor, I think 3 might be the top. But I would have to look. But anyways, so just looking at his roles, like, where do you guys feel this is at his top? Is it his best, second best? I know you haven't seen all his movies, Kat, but Vikash,
Yeah,
where do you?
I'm looking at him.
What do you think?
So if you compare this, I'd compare this performance to Martin Scorsese's 93 movie, Age of Innocence, where it's him and Michelle Pfeiffer in, a romance story. And that is kind of the closest I'd say this performance is in terms of like what the performance is itself. I can't really compare it to anything else. I think it is one of his best performances only off the fact that it is also one of his most giving performances as an actor. Because for an actor of his stature to, I wouldn't say go down a peg, but I'd say to be willing to share and equally share the power on screen with another actor. And Vicky Krieps kind of yanks it from him because she is that fantastic in this movie. I think it's one of his best.
Can I just give you this run of movies from 2002 on? Because he hasn't been in a lot of movies. So he goes...
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, he goes Gangs of New York. He goes Ballad of Jack and Rose, which I haven't seen. There'll Be Blood, legendary. 9, which I haven't seen, has a low rating on IMDb. Lincoln, which was my introduction to DDL, and let me tell you, like, blew my socks off. Vikash can tell you how many times I was trying to tell this guy to watch it for years. Steven Spielberg,
still
Daniel
haven't seen
Day-Lewis. Are you serious? Oh my god, dude.
Yeah, I'm serious. I've seen like 20 minutes, guys.
He's good.
I don't think I've seen it.
Hey, fun fact, in high school, for our film class, we made a mockery of it in a way by filming we did the same like cadence of the Lincoln trailer, but we did it for Obama. Because around the time, I think that was when Obama was elected or running or whatever.
It was 2012 re-election.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had to make a trailer, like a movie trailer, and I was like, "Oh, let me do it because we have a friend who like has the cadence of Obama." Yeah, I really did use I used the score from Hans Zimmer for Gladiator for that trailer, and it was a lot of like it was very much like me pushing the DDL
Yeah, we
button.
took some stuff from the Lincoln trailer for it. It was pretty funny. But anyways, and after that, he only did Phantom Thread, and then he retired again because I think he retired after Lincoln. So I don't think he's coming out of retirement anytime soon.
I don't think he's coming
I think
back.
he's done. What a way to leave one of our great actors. I mean, he doesn't.
note.
If you look at his IMDb, the man has done not many movies. Like he really, once he got into the game as like a great actor, he really picked his projects and then just disappeared after that. Yeah. Great actor.
Because he has like the classic performances like Last of the Mohicans, My Left Foot, those sorts of things where he like, I mean, there's a whole conversation to be had about like, is a character or like a actor who's always in character, are they being toxic? I mean, like, I don't think DDL ever goes to the Jared Leto stage of things of like being fully blind or, use condoms and rats and stuff that Jared Leto has done. But I think DDL always had a fine line as to what he was doing, and it sucks that he's gone. I think PTA might pull one out of him in the next, 20 years. Like, DDL is not that old. He's like 66. So here's to hoping.
That's really all I got for legacies. So what do you guys have?
I think this is an immediate classic. I mean, 6 years. Came out on Christmas. Side note, this is our Christmas to New Year's movie, like that week. So it being released on Christmas, if only it got the traction in theaters that we are giving the love for, I feel like that would be more memorable. But instant classic, it feels ageless. I mean, yeah, it's got like a historic setting, but ageless, classy. Love it.
Just search Phantom Thread on Twitter, and you're gonna see a million posts around New Year's of people posting the thing of them dancing at the New Year's party. Yeah.
Yep.
In the last 15 years, I think the only 2 movies I can say for a fact where I'm like, oh yeah, this should be on the rotation for people during like the holiday season is Phantom Thread and Alexander Payne's Holdovers from 2020.
I heard that was good.
Like, I haven't seen a movie come close to. Y'all will both enjoy it. We're going to talk about the Holdovers in a couple weeks while we do our own, Pursuit Podcast Awards, and then talk about the Oscars also. But we'll get into at that point. I think both of these movies have stellar scripts where the actors can just play into a different world almost. And it's the feelings that those emotional feelings that you want, you get those. That one's a bit more Christmassy, but they both got that juice though. Vicky Krieps has not popped off as she should have after that movie. I don't know what it is. She did Corsage. She's had a couple other movies, but like no one, like I can't go down the street and no one's gonna know that lady's name. No one's gonna recognize her, and I feel like that's a travesty.
I went back and forth if I wanted to bring up talking about that because I don't want it to come off as like crapping on her. I think she's picked some interesting directors.
No, I don't blame her.
She's picked some good directors. I just think that it just hasn't worked out. You know, like I'm gonna pull up a couple. Corsage was supposed to be a big one. M. Night Shyamalan for Old. Bergman Island was apparently supposed to be good. It had Tim Roth in it too, and that just kind of disappeared.
It's good. I don't think she's doing bad projects. It just feels like the system has failed her. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, I see that.
And it's like, so Lesley Manville, the person that plays Cyril, the sister, she is, I know y'all haven't seen a lot of Mike Leigh's movies, but Mike Leigh, just this great, almost a PTA-esque director for England. And Lesley Manville was in a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but she's in enough of his movies. And now after Phantom Thread, she's been on a pure roll. She's had random movies, small movies, like Ordinary Love with Liam Neeson.
A lot of TV.
Let Him Go with Kevin Costner, Diane Lane, both good. She's had a few shows, all good. Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris. I've seen people rewatching that movie that good.
Yep.
She's in the Crown as like Princess Margaret or something. I will never watch that show, but whatever. It's like she is popped off. It's almost like Mark Rylance.
She's got a lot of movies and shows under her belt. I'm looking at it. A lot of TV.
No, she puts in that work, and she's good.
Great.
She's good.
Yeah.
You never know who is like the biggest actor in the world. It's almost like when they have like Chinese actors in American movies, you know, because of like production or whatever. Like, and then it is like, oh yeah, they're like bigger than any actor that we know. So it's always crazy to see that stuff.
The first thing on her IMDb is from 1974.
Holy crap, she's been acting for a while.
She's been acting.
Oh yeah, no, she's been acting forever.
A lot of TV.
Is she British?
Yeah.
So she's like one of those classic British actors that work their way up in the system. Yeah. She's really good.
So PTA saw a photo of her and he was like, her face is 2 stops brighter than everybody else's. Like, so just visually, she's like brighter on screen. She was like, we got to book her right away. And scheduling worked out and they got her in there. And I love that for character actors. That's always awesome to see. I have one last thing I want to ask y'all about. Kind of a racy topic for me, but this movie is R-rated. Do y'all know why this movie is R-rated?
Because you can see her nipples through the sheer dress,
because he says fucking twice. Is it when he's talking about chic?
It's because of the language. In only
because
language.
He says fucking chic twice.
Do you think that if he had just cut the dialogue just that little tad bit for the language, that this movie being a PG-13 might have helped it a little bit?
I think when you see a costume drama that's PG-13, you start thinking it's made for like teenagers. Yeah.
Yeah. You think it's dry?
This is a $35 million movie, and PTA talks about how one of his producing partners is like, never, like, if they give you money to make a movie, go make that movie. But don't ask them for any more money because they're going to have thoughts about what you're doing. And PTA, and that's the problem with Crimson Peak. And this movie gets away with a lot of stuff. And it's only language that kind of, puts it at an R rating. This is a pretty clean cut movie.
I'm surprised it's an R.
I just think it's interesting that PTA is consistently able to make purely, a movie from his perspective. And that has never been strayed away from. Like he's not as big as Nolan, he's not as big as Denny, but he is just as great as a filmmaker. Yeah. And that's why on this podcast we want to point out and show love to movies like this.
I'm trying to think of if they cut it down, how many fuck words are you allowed to have in PG-13? One?
And I think they only had 2.
One.
They had 2. If we're right, they had 2. And honestly, if it's him saying no one fucking cares about the fucking whatever, I think that is the most natural response because I know when I say something like that, I'm going to say 2 rather than just 1. Or I'm going to say like a whole list of just the same curse word repeatedly because I'm exerting my distress, but also I'm exerting some sort of energy and distress through swearing, but I'm not going to have the energy to go and search for a rainbow of words. So I'm just going to keep saying the same one or two over and over. So him snapping and just saying it back to back, that logically it makes sense.
My point is that the legacy is that the MPAA, the Motion Picture Association, are bullshit. Like, it's like, why is Mad Max, besides like one or two shots, like why is that movie R-rated? Like, I don't know. It's like I feel it's very weird and it's very limiting to who can see art.
Did you ever see that documentary? And this film was not yet rated in 2006.
Yes.
And they go over the process that they go to rate movies.
I wrote a whole essay about it.
That was one of the first documentaries I ever watched.
I wrote a whole essay about the MPAA and why.
So what it is, Kat, it's just it's a panel of people who come in. I don't know if they're random, but just people who aren't really in the industry. They come in and they watch the movie and then they just say what they think the rating should be and why. And then what they do is, depending on the big studios, get more direct feedback, but smaller studios don't always get that sort of level of feedback, so they know what to change. So they go to the big studios and be like, change this and we'll make it an R. Otherwise, it's unrated and you won't be able to put it in theaters. And what the thing is, a lot of these directors do.
They wanted to limit big directors.
Well, there's a history behind it, Kat, with the Hays Code and all that, where like at one point movies the government at the time, but they thought were getting too racy, so they had to implement their own standards. The film industry did, to prevent the government from coming in and imposing standards. Okay. So they were self-imposing them, and it was at first the Hays Code, and then it evolved into what it is, the MPAA. And then the issue just became like, now a lot of directors will put in something really violent or derogatory in a movie. So then the MPAA says, oh, if you just cut that, we'll make it R, and then they just cut it. But with small movies, a lot of times they just don't give them as much good feedback. They intentionally
put in something worse.
Mm-hmm. Comedies and horror movies do that. Yeah,
that is how you enter negotiations.
Yep.
So for Taxi Driver, DGA podcast, first episode, it's Bridge of Spies, Spielberg and Martin Scorsese talking. Go listen to it, anyone who lives movies. But what I'm talking about is there's a conversation in there about how Taxi Driver, all they had to do was twist the color of blood during a specific scene in the third act to get the movie from an X rating down to an R rating. It's a form of censorship where it's like the artistic integrity, when it's kept, it really works. And I don't think it's no discredit to like a Nolan or Denis Villeneuve doing Dune and PG-13. They still find their way around it. And we were talking about Catching Fire. Talk about how R-rated that movie is.
Yeah, honestly, there's some like R-rated content in there too. And we talked about how it's hard to believe that somehow PG-13 let you see a man get shot in the fucking head.
Vikash, tell her how PG-13 came about.
So Spielberg kept making all these movies I think it was in the 80s, and they're like, oh, like, these movies are kind of like, they're not PG. They're not supposed to be for kids.
Why does Jaws eat a naked lady?
Well, there's a specific one that changed it.
Exactly. Was it Gremlins?
Temple of Doom.
I remember. No,
Temple
it wasn't
of Doom.
Gremlins. It was Temple of Doom.
Because I think that came out as PG. That came out as PG, and people were like, what the heck?
Yeah.
This is not a PG movie. There's like sacrifices. Yeah. But they didn't want to make it R either, because they wanted people who were like under 18 to see it.
They're literally eating brains and stuff
that
in
was
the movie.
The creation of PG-13. So Spielberg didn't want to make it R. He wanted to make it PG, or Spielberg wanted PG. They wanted it R. So the compromise was PG-13, and it was the creation of that in between.
Shout out to Spielberg for opening a whole nother like age range in these weird censoring.
Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing?
Well, if we have to pick an extreme, it's nice to have a middle, I guess. But I mean, clearly I don't know enough to give a heavy
But it's like it's changed the entire industry.
That's wild.
Alrighty, winding it down almost. MVP. Who put their team on the back this time around? When Kevin Durant says you the MVP, mom, who is that MVP for you in this film, Kat?
So I want to give recognition to the whole team here. Fantastic. Everyone is vital and important to this film. I appreciate everyone involved. I want to give my special MVP shout out to Vicky Krieps, because she did a fantastic job at Elma. And without her narration, that one thing that detail that's throughout the whole film, you would lose so much of the life and the love and the emotion of the story. And it kind of grounds you throughout these waves of weird, wild drama and bickering and relationship stuff. And you know that that's a narration from the future, so you have an idea of where the story ends. But just that detail, I appreciate, and Vicky Krieps does a phenomenal job. And I just want to give all my shout outs to her tonight. Thank you, DDL, for your lead.
She was mine too.
I will bow down to her for this film. It's fantastic. All hail the queen, Vicky Krieps.
And I will say DDL just deserves credit off camera because he and Paul might have wrote the story and the script,
yeah.
But there's a lot of info and pieces, little niblets of stuff that PTA and Daniel were talking about that made it into this movie. And that sort of level of creative partner should be a co-writer. So it's like, he's not my MVP. It very much is Vicky Krieps because on screen, he did, Paul says, like, Daniel Day-Lewis is nervous because of this woman. Off screen, like, bro,
that's
what?
Awesome.
Like, how hard is it to find that level of an actress to be in this role, to be of this background, too? There's a very specific casting that they made with this decision. Yeah. And then she works brilliantly in this movie. And it just, I hate that. It's like, I hope people give her flowers and give her respect because it is so well deserved. Great MVP, Cat. Zach, who do you have?
I have Daniel Day-Lewis. So, but really, just the movie wouldn't work without his manner of speaking, his body language, his comedic tone, his ability to play off of other actors. Just a masterclass performance by him. And it's something he's done time and time again in his movies where he comes in and he's a tour de force. Every time he's on screen, he takes over the movie. You can't keep your eyes off him. He's doing a million things in each scene with a lot of intent and thought. He's able to act but not overact. He's able to sell emotion without having to even speak words. He's one of our greatest actors of this generation, and they were really fortunate they got him for this movie. Yeah, ever.
And I love how he speaks so eloquently throughout the whole film, and it's to the point where you take him seriously for that historical drama element. But if you listen to the words and the content that he's speaking, half the time he's whining and complaining and behaving like a freaking brat. And it takes so much talent to be able to deliver that properly and you not to hate the character. And he does a fantastic job. I don't think anyone else could do Reynolds like him.
But I think the testament is the scene where they're taking the photographs with when Vicky Krieps, when Alma's taking the photos and they have him come in.
Yep.
And he's sitting on the ground and he looks, it's one of the photos that Zach and Kat recreated for their wedding.
Mm-hmm.
I took the photo myself. But that photo, that moment where he looks up at her like it's just like the best thing in his life right now. And then within 2 seconds, he's like,
can I go back
I'm done
to
with
work?
this photo. I got to get back to work.
I wrote that down.
Can I be done with it? It's like,
I thought that was hilarious.
But it's like the way there's a lot of inner life within this role that Daniel shows off. And it's not flashy. It's very much where you can look at a person's face, see what they're thinking. And you get all those moments with him. And you might not think about it, but it's like subconsciously, it's the most intentional acting that an actor can do without speaking dialogue. And it's like, how do you give props to the GOAT? It's like the man is the best at what he is, one of the best to ever do it in his field. And this movie is a great reason why. So there's a lot of movies. I wouldn't say there's a lot of movies, but there's some movies like this. Kat, do you have any movies that would complement Phantom Thread extremely well? Anything in the book, what would it be?
Phantom Thread is so authentic and original that you will never find a same exact vibe. That being said, I highly recommend watching Portrait of a Lady on Fire, 2019, and Little Women, also 2019. Both of them historical drama vibe. One of them is a lesbian romance. You know, they're great. If you like this movie, especially if you like the historical setting, I would highly recommend those films.
Great movies. I haven't seen Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
You will.
But I will recommend another queer drama, historical drama, called The Handmaiden. Fantastic movie from Park Chan-wook that I know both of you will love. And I will, in the same breath, say that both y'all need to go watch Park Chan-wook's Decision to Leave. This movie is just as great as this one. It's not as funny, but it's just as romantically fascinating. I hope that anybody who has 2 ounces of love for romance movies, go watch Decision to Leave. It's a cop movie. That's what it looks like, at front, but it's very much a romance movie. Okay, Zach, I'm gonna take the stage from you real quick. Let me recommend like 6 more things.
Oh my God.
If Beale Street Could Talk, Barry Jenkins' 2018 movie. I love movies. These are very good romance movies. The GOAT, the OG, Rebecca, Alfred Hitchcock. Go check it out. If you like Jane Eyre, same thing. 2011, great movie. Robert Wise, The Haunting, fantastic. Gaslight, OG, fantastic. Suspicion, fantastic. I'm gonna stop talking because there's just so many good movies like this or like gothic dramas. And if you want gothic horror, go check out Haunting of Hill House, Netflix. Zach, what are you recommending for this movie?
Yeah, so I had a hard time finding one because I think a lot of these costume dramas, even when they try to be funny, are really not very funny. I think that Phantom Thread hits a level of humor that I've never seen in a costume drama. The closest I could find was the 2005 Joe Wright Pride and Prejudice, one with Keira Knightley and Matthew McFadden.
I almost wrecked that.
That actually does have some humor in it and has the whole, dressed up, the love interests are interesting. It's not the same as Phantom Thread, but if you like Phantom Thread, I think you would like this movie.
I also would recommend that. It was on my list.
Yeah, I think every single one I recommended is not funny. Not one bit. I think all the other movies that you can recommend for this, they're not as funny as this one. They're not as dryly humorous. I think they're all very serious, and when it comes to push, like all the emotional moments sell extremely well in those. It does in this one too, but it's like this one's a bit more messed up in a sense, and the comedy kind of ushers you into it in a good way.
I realize I should have said this earlier during Hot Takes, but I'm going to say it now so I can make sure it's on the record. I think Phantom Thread is the funniest movie of the 2010s, hands down. I've seen a lot of great comedies in the 2010s. Phantom Thread never fail. Yeah, look at me that way. Phantom Thread is the funniest movie of the 2010s, and I say that as a fact. For me, other people, it can be other things, but for me,
this movie ain't got no Kate Blanchett. Where's Ice Cube telling me that she may fuck the captain's daughter?
I watched 21 Jump Street the other day.
On, this is
funnier. I'm just saying.
Zachary, what about Game
22,
Night?
22.
This is
22.
the funniest movie of the 2010s
Game Night's
for me.
funnier.
I don't know how many times I need to say it. This is the funniest
Crazy
movie of the
Stupid Love.
2010s for me. Funniest movie of the 2010s for me.
Crazy Stupid Love is better too. David Lindhagen. Oh my God.
We gotta do Crazy Stupid
We're
Love
doing
at some
Crazy
point.
Stupid Love on the podcast.
We have a long list of movies to do on this pod.
For next year, for Valentine's Day.
You know what? I'm not gonna say I agree that it is the funniest, but it is probably one of my, if not my favorite movie from the 2010s.
Gotcha. Well, so sometime in the future we should do a pod where we give our like top 5s or top 10s for the 2010s. I think that'd be fun. Of course, we already missed the end of the 2010s, but I think that'd be a fun pod. So
that's gonna be so much work.
No, we don't have to watch. You don't have to rewatch all of them.
I know, but I'm gonna have to go through so.
Or we do a
many
draft
movies.
of them. Like a draft would be fun. Like we could figure something out that would be.
We
fun
could totally
with that.
figure something out.
We'll figure
Brainstorm
out a
bit.
cool mechanic. But
Yeah.
anyways, do you guys have any closing thoughts on Phantom Thread? This is an awesome movie. Probably the most special movie for me and Kat as a couple. Like it is a great movie.
I give Phantom Thread 5 stars, 10 out of 10, and I recommend watching it for New Year's.
Little Roger Ebert over there.
If you like this movie, I do recommend watch. If you love Daniel Day-Lewis and his voice in this movie, go listen to Roger Deakins' podcast, because I was watching this movie and I was like, wait, Daniel Day-Lewis and Roger Deakins have the same exact voice. I was like, it's kind of hot.
If you love this movie, I would suggest that you go get in a relationship and ask your significant other to poison you.
Zachary, are you saying you have a kink or something?
I'm just saying
10
that
years in and I didn't know this.
I want to be poisoned.
I guess
Honestly,
so.
I mean, aren't mushroom omelets like the way to, like, my heart? I don't know what else to say. Like,
The way to
guys, I'm
something.
single.
All right, go ahead and close it up.
But I hope everybody's doing well. Katie, it's been great to have you on yet again on the podcast.
I'm always here, man. Always happy to be on.
Next episode, we will be doing one of my favorite movies of all time. One of the best movies ever made yet again. Back to the Future. We will have another great guest on for that. Zach, any thoughts closing this out here?
1, I forgot we were doing Back to the Future next. 2, stay with us, guys. We got some really exciting stuff coming on. Oscar season is coming, so we're going to have some great pods around that. We also have some other really great movies coming soon, so stick with us, and we'll see you next time.
We're also going to be doing the Oscar. We're going to do the Best Picture winner, La La Land also.
Yeah.
It's going to be, Moonlight? La La Land. La La Land. We're going to do La La Land. I hope everything's great out there, y'all. Love and peace.
Have a good one.
We will see you next time.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of Cinema Pursuit. Cinema Pursuit is produced by Catie Nadell, Zach Nadell, and Vikas Patel. Special thanks to Cole Cooper for the intro and outro music. You can listen to Cinema Pursuit on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you may listen to podcasts. Follow us on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at Cinema Pursuit Podcast, Twitter or X at Cin Pursuit Pod, and check out our subreddit, r/Cinema Pursuit.